baton was passed, hopping down, cause failing's not an option, and dad is not a noun, not at all.
My message to any dad, man, first off, know that, yeah, it is a hard job, but it's the greatest job in the world. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I wouldn't change anything about it. Everything you're doing from here on out, if it didn't have purpose before, now it has purpose. It's the most important thing you'll ever do. Just be a dad.
Welcome to another episode of Dad is Not a Noun. My name is Ishmael, changing the narrative for men of color fatherhood, as well as changing the narrative on the things I care about. And today, what do I care about? I have a special guest on with me, and this special episode is for the girl dads, as well as the moms who love doing their daughter's hair or their son's hair. And my guest created 2 amazing books, which I think should be implemented when you're doing your child's hair and you want to know the why you're doing this hairstyle for your child. And I'm truly honored to have her on. She is the best-selling, award-winning author, a licensed cosmetologist, and a beauty marketing executive, originally from the BX. Put the X up there, BX. The one and only Zenda Walker. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And she's the author of an amazing book called Wash Day, Zara, which is based on her daughter, Zara Olivia. And also she has a book called, there we go, you see it, Zion's Crown. So if you don't have the book now, go get the book. I do believe it's it's Target, or they can go to your website, which will be in the link in the description below. If you want to copy the book, I recommend you get this book. But thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
My next question, because I ask all my guests, because I'm all about mental health, especially in our community. How's your heart?
Wow. So that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it, actually. I think my heart is well. But my heart, I think that everything that you see going on in the world, and even issues related to the topic of our heritage and our self-esteem, there's a lot of ups and downs, right? We have to always constantly be making sure that our hearts are good, and that we're good. So for now, I think I practice things every day, including my writing and putting positive energy out into the world. That helps me receive that back. So right now I'm feeling good.
Nice. And then also, I'm a poet, and I love to play on words. Where did you come up with the concept heritage?
Yeah, I like the connection that we have then. That's why we have a good vibe, because the poetry, I always say I'm from the Bronx, so I have the lyricism in me, right? The birth of hip hop. But yeah, obviously I, kind of made up that word. It's a play on the word. The traditional word heritage means customs, practices, traditions, and beliefs that are passed down from a predecessor or an ancestor. So when I say heritage, I'm talking about the hair customs, practices, beliefs, and that we pass down from generation to generation. And the reason why it's such an important word is because it's a universal concept as well, because everyone has a heritage, even those who do not have hair have a story behind why they don't, right? So I think it's just something that I thought would really has a lot of legs and has a global connection to the audience.
And I agree with that too. And I think that's important too, because often when you talk about culture and ethnic groups, it's about culture. It's about language. It's about hair. These are things that you can draw back for your heritage,
Right. And even when you think about when we start, and I focus a lot right now on these first 2 books on the African-American story, right? And our link to our African ancestry. When we think about pre-colonial heritage, our hair was such a huge part of our communication. Just from someone's hair, you could tell what geographic region they were from, right? You could tell if they were married. You could tell if they were mourning, if they were ready to get married. It was such a huge, and still is a huge, communication tool, but it also is a source of expression as well. So I say that, while we have modernized our hair and we've gone through so much history with our hair, it still is a great communicator to share with people who you may be, right? How you're feeling that day, but also it always will connect you to your ancestry.
And I think that's important that you said connected to your your ancestors. I posed a question to a previous guest, and before I give you the reason why I posed this question, I'm going to pose it to you. What does a mother intuition mean to you?
Oh, a mother's intuition. Wow. It's that I think as a mother, whether you and if you whether you birthed that child yourself or you saw that child throughout their childhood and gained a connection, it's almost like a spiritual slash intuitive connection to another human being that is it's like an unspoken connection that you're connected to that person's emotions, you're connected to that electricity between people, and you're able to kind of make decisions and or check in on people just from that instinct that you have or that feeling that you get about what may be troubling them but what may be bringing them joy as well, right? That's that there's an exchange that sometimes it's hard to even describe.
And that's the beauty of it. It's hard to describe, but the most important thing about it is that relating to your story is the reason why you wrote the book was, your daughter, you have a great communication with your daughter, but you saw things that she wouldn't tell you. You felt it.
Oh, yes.
And if you want to talk about that,
Let's talk about that. Absolutely, absolutely. So, as my daughter was developing into into being like a toddler, let's say, I saw this joy, just from watching her being an infant and connecting to her and showing her love, right? The things that we do as parents to really just show love, feeding her every day, making sure when she's sick, I'm there to take care of her, stroking her hair, just doing that exchange that really shows love at all levels. And so I find that younger children, like in their toddlers, they have a level of joy when you know that they're being attended to, right? When they know they're being loved. And I would hear her, even if there was something that she desired in her life, right? Oh, mommy, I really want my hair to look like this person's hair. It really always came from a place of joy. It was very innocent childlike behavior, right? When children want other things from like that their friends have, it's just because they want to have that inclusion. But then I started seeing a change in her. Instead of saying, mommy, can I please have this? It was, mommy, why do I have to wear my hair in braids? Or why do I have to? It just felt there was a shift in her attitude and in the way she talked about her hair, the little descriptive words she would use. And so I knew that just like the things I experienced when I was younger, there might have been some outside messages, because no matter how much I affirmed her at home, she was getting a message that something may be wrong with her hair, or her hair was not desirable, her aesthetic something was wrong there. And I had a very similar situation when I was younger, so I recognized it immediately. And I realized that there were things I could do different in our special moments, especially on hair wash day. We all know about a hair wash day or going to the barber, those milestone moments, right? Or those really significant moments in our childhood and our hair experiences. I knew I could do some things differently to encourage her or to build up her confidence. And it didn't have to be blatant, right? Like I could just say, oh my gosh, your curls are dancing, they look so beautiful. Or, wow, like your hair is magical, right? Just using words that would just build her. Being also very gentle on wash day and not kind of rushing through it, and taking the time to have that bonding moments. Where her hair didn't feel, it was not a chore, it wasn't a burden. It was like, I'm excited for this time with you. So let's plan for it, right? What movie do you want to watch? Or what book what do you want to talk about? Let's have some snacks. Let's make this a joyful experience.
And it's awesome that you bring that up, because I think it's something that connects you and your daughter. And I think it's important that connects to all parents, whether you're a dad, a mom, single dad. It's that connection, especially with your son. Like, you find that common ground, whether it's playing sports or something. You meet them in the middle, because often some parents don't meet their kids in the middle. It's like it's my way or the highway.
Exactly. And that's a shift too, because to your point, I had to unlearn some of the things I also learned growing up, where it's like you're a child, speak when spoken to, or you're to be seen, not heard, or you're standing there waiting for all the adults in the room to stop the conversation, and you have to politely just wait, And I'm realizing that there's this kind of battle happening on like social media and in pop culture in general, where it's like gentle parenting versus like, the two extremes. And meeting in the middle, I think, is really where we need to have that balance for our children, but also for ourselves as parents.
Right. And then how do you, because again, you grew up, I remember the story you had about the young boy you had a crush on.
Oh,
How were you able to not pass that trauma? Because often in our community is a thing called trauma bonding, right?
absolutely.
We take our generational trauma and we don't realize it. We're pouring that into our kids. So like you were talking about, you had to learn how to disconnect yourself and learn how to reparent yourself. So just talk about that process of like not pouring into that trauma you dealt with onto your daughter.
Absolutely. So, for anybody who hadn't heard that story, I had an incident in, I was probably about 5 or 6 years old, where I had a crush on a little boy, and we wrote the note that note that everybody writes back. Do you like me? Do you like me? Let's check these boxes. And then when we established that we had that crush on each other, he asked me if I was white or black. And so it became this moment where a lot of children, we're so innocent. Like we might know about race, but it doesn't matter. We love all people, like, right? It's not like we don't know all the nuances that come with what we learn later on about, discrimination, supremacy, and all the things that can make life really negative. I just had an innate feeling, though, that if I told him the truth, that he would not like me. And so that just told me two things about being a young person in that world. And is that being black, the connotation of being black or black crayon, there was just a lot of negative energy around that. And I felt sick to my stomach because I had to choose in that moment, and I really wanted him to like me. And I felt sick because number one, I was about to lie because I was very grounded in who I was. Right. But number two, when he told me, well, so what's wrong with your hair? It told me, wow, it told me three things actually, because the number two thing was that there was something called colorism, right? Even the privilege that I had to be able to try to fool somebody in that moment, right? Like, and knowing that if I said I was white, that I may have a better chance, right? Or that I could benefit from my skin even being lighter. So that's at such a young age, right? Number three, it was that my hair was quote unquote wrong with it in his eyes. And so I knew that was a very defining moment for me. And it was confusing for me because at home I was beautiful, right? Or around my community, it was just, I never thought for a second that I was not beautiful. And then the outside world told me something different. And so it impacted me in the sense that I started seeing that more every time I went into the outside world. I got different messages and different experiences. And I knew that it hit me so hard then that I knew that when I started seeing that in my daughter, there were things that I could do to try to prepare her to respond differently. Right. And I think that I'm learning as a parent that you don't just do it one time, right? You have to start incorporating things throughout their entire life. Don't just be responsive, be proactive, right? So you have to start building them up early on and not wait for these things that kind of like happen to them, because oftentimes children are not going to tell you about those moments. Like, I don't think I went home and told my parents about that. I just internalized it. Right. And so what I do now is I just make it like I create an environment for my daughter where she feels like she can tell me everything. And that even if she thinks that I will be displeased in some way, that it's a safe space, that mommy may not like it, but we can talk through it. We can work through it. We can build some sort of strategy around it. But what we're not going to do is not feel like you don't have a safe place where you can express yourself. And so that's really what I do. I practice, and I have to constantly also remind myself to practice it, right? Because it's easy to fall back into the traumas or the things we learned that maybe didn't serve us in life.
Yeah, and I agree with that. It's a habit. But also, what is that balancing act of, giving that affirmation and letting her know the realities of the world?
Oh, yes. Well, so to your point, absolutely. You can't be so like you can be as affirming as you want, but you do have to be real, right? And I think that there's that, again, that battle that's happening in the world around toxic positivity and toxic negativity, right? The two extremes. Like there is I do believe you can be so positive that it can be toxic, right? In the sense that you stray so far to one side that you're not balancing it out with the reality. So yes, exactly. Like what's happening is that my daughter is experiencing life as we go. So it's like, I don't want her to think that when I share ways to deal with things, or that this world is so positive that that there's a blockage, that she gets even more harmed by the hard things, right? I want her to almost kind of see that it may happen. Right. So I'll say things like, okay, so I give an example of something that may have happened the other day. So she went away to a camp experience. It was her first time at sleepaway camp, for instance. And, I said to her, I said, you're going to experience so many different things, right? You're not going to have your iPad with you. You're going to learn how to kind of be present, right? In the moment, experience different things. You're going to learn about nature. You're going to be meeting new friends, but, you may not get along with everyone, for instance, right? And some people may not connect with you, but that's okay. That's still okay, because I'm not for everybody. You may not be for everybody, but there's a way to manage conflict.
Yes.
Right. And so I just prepare her for that. Like, oh, everybody's going to love you. You're going to be fine. Everybody, that's not real. But then it's also okay to be not liked and not feel like you're still not worthy, right? You're still worthy, even though everyone in the world's not going to like you. Right. And so I think it's just being proactive and making sure you sit down and have those conversations. And that's not just it's not about gentle parenting or what, like we actually should just listen for a time to our children, let them talk. You'll be surprised at how much you learn about them, and then how much more open they become when they feel like they have a voice.
And I agree with that. I think this generation of kids are, I won't say super mature, but they know what's going around them, around their little world.
Right.
And I think it's important to understand that. I know it's uncomfortable truth, but to prepare your kids for rejection, because they're going to get rejected, and how they cope with it.
And sometimes don't be so protective, or you don't allow them to sometimes fail or have those experiences, because what I'm seeing is when you're so overprotective and you do everything for your child, they will never learn how to bounce back, or they are even more harmed by the shock of failing, or shock of, oh, that didn't work out the way it was supposed to, right? And so you do your child a disservice when you don't allow for that. And sometimes it's hard, because we do want to protect our children from the things that maybe we experienced, but I think that that's also something that we're in a place where I think we're also learning with our children. We're a generation where you're just growing with them as well.
No,
right?
definitely. And what I think is important, that every parent relates to your story, and I think that's important too. And what I appreciate about the book is that you have these conversations when you wash your daughter's hair, and you have these conversations, you're doing your hair, you're having the conversations of the why.
Yes.
And it's important. So talk about that.
So this is what was really important to me. I think that we've been in this amazing movement of Black people just loving on each other, right? We are talking about Black girl magic. We are loving on our skin. We're loving on, we have beauty brands that are popping up everywhere. Black creators are just doing it. And I feel like this is like a historical time and a great time to be Black, right? But I also think that, we also need to always go back to the why. Why, like we say, Black girl magic, but why are we so magical, right? Let's talk about the tangible things, the things that we can really pinpoint about us as a people that are magical. And for me, as a hairstylist, as somebody that's always worked with hair, I always was able to build people up through their hair stories and through building up the why behind their hair. And so with my daughter, it became this lesson about, do you know why your hair is curly? Let's talk about it, because that's part of our magic. Okay. So did you know that our hair was designed to protect us from the heat, right? When people are melanated, deeply melanated, our hair is deeply melanated. Part of why we're melanated or have this beautifully melanated hair is, number one, it was designed that way, right? The melanin absorbs the sun's rays, right? And kind of deflects it, right? So that our cells don't get damaged by the UV. Now, I'm not saying not to wear sunscreen. However, the fact that our bodies naturally do that is magic, right?
Right.
Or the fact that, our hair can be transformed. It's like our transformer. It can transform into so many different things. And with kids, I always talk about, do you remember the movie Moana, right? How Maui could just become all parts of the elements of the world and everything. That's kind of what our hair does too. Like, for instance, I wear these tiny sister locks. These sister locks look like yarn, right? Whereas if I blow out your hair and I put some heat to it, your hair can look like silk. Your hair can also defy gravity when it's in its most natural state, which is also a part of the science behind our hair, right? It protects us from the heat. Your root might be less dense because your body acts as a natural filtration system to keep you cool in warm, really warm weather, right? Our people from the equator, right? Like, there's just so much about that. And so when my child hears all that, how do you think she acts when someone talks about her hair, tries to tell her hair isn't nice, right? Or her hair isn't beautiful? She's going to give them the rundown, right? Let me tell you why my hair is magical. So, yeah.
And I think it's amazing that you brought to the world your private conversations with your daughter when you were doing her hair. So, like, what gave you the confidence to say, you know what, I'm gonna let her enter my.
Sorry, I missed that.
I'll rephrase it again. Like, from what I read, it was basically you're telling the story of that private moments you have with your daughter doing her hair. So what built your confidence of telling that story to the world?
That's a great question, because I had been writing for a very long time, but never considered myself an author. And I realized, oh my God, I'm an author. I just haven't published yet. But what made me have the courage is in 2020, it was a really tough time for a lot of people, right? We were dealing with a couple different things, right? Number one, COVID, the fear of COVID. I was homeschooling my daughter and trying to figure out how to do that and navigate being a corporate mom. And then we were hit with the reality of George Floyd. Now, I grew up in the Bronx in the 80s, in New York in the 80s. George Floyd was nothing new to, not really anything new to our community, but I think it entered our home in a different way. We were forced to watch something so horrific. Yeah. And it was triggering for me. It was triggering for me because years before that, I saw something that I could not unsee. And it was a very similar situation, another hashtag, Philando Castile. Yeah. And I thought, I went to so many protests with my daughter in 2020. We marched, we made signs. I had to talk to her about the best way I knew how and what was really going on in the world. Because even though she didn't know all the details, she sensed something was wrong. She knew something was going on, and she was at the protest and we were fighting for justice. And I still felt like helpless. I felt helpless because the hashtags kept coming. I still had all the anger and fear. And so I thought, let me keep writing. Writing was a way for me to release a lot of that tension, that trauma. And I thought, I'm writing. And then this story was coming to me, and I thought, this could be the way that I activate my rebellion, my protest. I can write a story that is uplifting for Black children. And this could be my long game in really helping us as a people turn the narrative around, right? Build confidence, which also leads to better outcomes in education. It leads to dealing with conflict differently. It just is a domino effect of building up our young leaders. And so I thought that this is how I can impact the world.
And you have, and I think the beauty of what you're doing is you're giving people alternative when it comes to our culture. You know,
Absolutely.
sometimes our culture is dominated. I don't want to say the word, but I'm gonna say it by the bullshit. I'm gonna just say it out loud, the bullshit, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
you're giving them an option to say, you know, there's some things out there that can uplift us. We can find something in there, and especially when I think about Zara Wash Day, is, you know, you have a lot of dads that love doing their daughter's hair. And the beauty about this book is like you're giving dads the cheat sheets of a conversation they can have with their daughters.
Absolutely. And so that's another thing that kind of inspired me and motivated me was I started seeing more of that. And there's nothing more joyful than when you see a dad and his baby girl, having those moments. And you know what? It's like, I know that dads have been doing this, have been, a part of these significant special moments with their children, their sons and daughters, but you don't see it enough. And that's why I knew I had to follow the story of Zara's Wash Day with one that centered a Black boy and his family as well.
And let's talk about that. Talk about Zion Khan. Talk about that.
Yes. So after, the success of Zara's Wash Day, and I was starting to listen more, social listening to my audience and different people who were like, what about the boys? Or I can't, I have a son. I wish I had a book like this for my son as well. So I thought, you know what? We're fighting the good fight with the Crown Act and making sure there's no hair discrimination. And there's a lot of women marching to the plate and a lot of conversation around women in the workplace. But I always, think about our brothers, right? Black men are rocking locks. They're rocking braids. They're rocking the bees, look at Noah Lyles at the Olympics.
Yeah.
And our kings are doing all of this. And I see these little boys with their cornrows and I think, they are also probably dealing with many of the same things that we as women in the workplace are dealing with, and just in general out in the world. And so I thought, we don't see it enough. And this is also my head nod, my contribution, my upliftment of our men, right? And also to honor the men who are no longer with us, right? In our community, who represented us so well, but are also, again, not here due to violence, right? Or due to, just the generations of just forgetting of the impact that men have in our community. And while you see our community, we've been uplifting ourselves through our education, through being leaders in so many different industries, what I realize is that we see a lot of women being praised for their contributions, but again, let's not forget the men and let's build up that family story and get us back to loving on each other again as a community.
Definitely. And I think community is an important thing too. And then also what I love is what you're going to be implementing down the road is that not just, Black people, other ethnic groups too. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So as I'm doing my research in just learning about this like triangular slave trade, like how our hair has impacted politics, science, everything you can think of, every industry, every category, I realized that there's a common thread of Afrocentrism, right, in many different communities. So when we think about even the triangular slave trade, a lot of the Latino community is impacted by curly coily, Afro coily hair. Why? Because there's a thread and there's a connection to the continent as well. So, and I started seeing even more and more Latino creators coming to the forefront, creating brands for curly hair. And I thought, wow, there's a lot, that community as well has been impacted by anti-Blackness, right? And not loving our hair because it's so connected to this Afro, this African ancestry. So I thought, wow, like let's tell a story for the Afro Latinas, right? Or and share that heritage that's so connected as well. There's a story of the Native American community, how their hair and how each individual tribe wore their hair to communicate who they are in the world, right? And to also pass down their story. So I think there's so much to unpack there as well. But there's also something to unpack in the Asian community. And let's be honest, like in certain European communities, right? There's a Ukrainian story around where Ukrainian women wear these floral crowns, right? So everyone has a heritage. And I think that one of the things that can connect us is those stories. And what I love is that there's a common thread, but even the things that make us so different, this is how we can get to a better understanding about who we are, right? Why Black children say, don't touch my hair, right? Let's talk about it. You can better understand why you can't just come and like invade this sacred space, right? So there's a reason why the braid is so such a strong symbol in the Native American community. And it may be different from why braids are important in the Black community, but let's talk about it so we can really connect as communities that are really just human communities.
Yes. And
right?
I love
At the end of the day.
yes, facts. And I love that because I think that term thread, I go back to one of Obama's speeches, I do believe. And he said the thread that connects us together. And the thread that you alluded to is our hair. We can have a conversation about that. And I love that, what you're doing.
And to your point, Obama as a very strong Black male father figure. Do you remember that moment where the young boy came to the Oval Office and you see him, Obama bent down, he said, your hair is like mine. And he allowed the little boy to touch his hair. I mean, there's moments like that that just fill my heart and remind me every day that what I'm doing, what you're doing is so important to our community, that representation it can change a child's life. And so I'm glad to be a leader in the movement.
And you are, and you're doing phenomenal. My last question to you, I know you probably watched last night with your daughter.
Oh, yes.
You know where I'm going to go with it, right? Yeah. I'm not gonna say it out loud. I can say it out loud, but we know what we're talking about, right?
Absolutely.
So, as a mother watching last night with your daughter, the speech, like what came to your mind, and what was that conversation like with your daughter?
There's a couple of things. When you live in a world where you can go from 100% joyful to almost numbingly sad, because that is the existence. That's what it means to be Black in America, right? You can have so many highs and joyful moments, but then you can hear about a Sonia Massey, right? And be completely destroyed inside. It is so encouraging, no matter what side of the party you're on, how, where you are politically, to just see a room full of people feeling hopeful, feeling joyful, but also seeing a woman, a multicultural woman, a Black woman, a woman with Indian background, right? An Indian Black woman, right? Even be able to run for the highest office in this country, which is so conflicted with so much different energy, right? To see little Black girls, little Black boys be on stage with their locks, with their curly, coily, Afro coily hair, and to see a leader like Kamala Harris step up to the plate and be considered and being nominated in such a high ranking position.
Right.
I think that it's just a victory within itself that we are here.
Yes.
Whether she wins or not, this is a victory, right? Within even the last 20 years, let's think about it. Like the potential for there to be another, first of all, a woman, but then a Black woman at that, behind a Barack Obama, a former president, Barack Obama, is incredible. And so for me and my daughter, it was about being able to say, see, Zara, like anything's possible. Look at how she's applied herself. Look at how she set out to be this person. She's very about who she is. She had, a strong foundation that allowed her to believe and what she achieved. This is what happens. This is what happens when we leave and when we have love in life. So absolutely, I think that there are homes all over the world that are being encouraged, that are being amped up, pumped up. You might have put down a dream, you might have bad moment, but again, it allows us to energy that gets back into the community. And I be to be alive this time in our history. Believe it, to me, between the historic President Barack Obama to a woman as a democratic need, now I actually feeling more like anything's patriotic, even be feeling like, to a I feel like this is our time of information, our history with these. I'm reclaiming representation, and last night was our reclamation of our Americanism, right? Of our right to be patriotic. So absolutely, I'm here for all of it.
And that's awesome. And the reason why I brought that up, because I wanted to end the conversation with, I go back to when Black Panther came out. You had a very special person be a part of the book. If you want to talk about that, go for it, because I think this is a perfect way to end the conversation.
No, thank you for bringing that up. And Wakanda was iconic within itself, right? So, and when we think about even that fictional world, I think that even when that launched, that gave a lot of people hope too, because to imagine that, I actually think you might not even need to look like Wakanda, but I think we might actually have moments of Wakanda in our community. So last night was an example, and I think being able to work with such a dynamic and amazing talent like Lupita Nyong'o was monumental for me, because I met her through another amazing artist, her stylist in LA, Vernon Francois, very talented gentleman, like just an amazing artist. And I didn't know at the time who I was going to meet. And then when I saw her, I was like, wow, this is an amazing opportunity. But also I got to work with her. She was wearing locks at the time. So I was able to maintain her hair as well for several years, and then work with her on several different projects. And what I'll say about that experience is that her sharing her hair story in her foreword was just another example of how, bridging worlds together, right? She's a woman, an African woman, who had many experiences with her hair. And I'm just so proud and happy that she felt enough about me that she would contribute to the book. she's an amazing talent, just an amazing person. And I'm excited for the many projects that, in the career that she'll have, forever, because she's just an amazing talent. Yeah, so I'm glad she was able to contribute, and it's been a pleasure to just know her and work with her.
Definitely. And one more thing, I gotta give shout out to because I haven't heard that at all. Give a shout out to the illustrator. How do you connect with Princess Caribou?
Oh yes, Princess Caribou, she's amazing. So I was researching illustrators, and I came across her art, and I also came across an article that talked about up and coming illustrators to look at, and she was like number 3 on the list. And I reached out. This is where I started learning how to use my voice and to go for it. And the answer could be no, but at least knowing that you went for it. So I wrote to her and I said, wow, I'm doing this project. I would love if you could work with me. And so we had like a little bit of a trial area. I wanted to know how she would interpret some of my writing. And I knew she understood the assignment. I wanted somebody that would respect the texture of our hair, the beauty of our skin. And she nailed it on every illustration. And I thought, wow, she's the one. And I worked with her and a gentleman named Anthony Ferranda to like design the book. So there's the different elements of the book that are steeped in African culture, right? Like the cover is on Kara fabric, right? Of West Africa. I'm giving a tribute to all of the different ethnic groups that I talk about in the book by using their ethnic shield, right? And so when I put this together, I was very intentional in making sure that this could be not only a fun, colorful, vibrant book that children and their parents or guardians, adults would enjoy reading together, but that would also be a work of art, right? Something that could be a coffee table piece and a topic of discussion. So I'm so grateful to have met Princess Caribou, Anthony Ferranda, and I'm grateful that, not to, I guess, imitate our good friend Snoop Dogg, but I'd like to thank myself. Like, I want to be, that's something that I never did, because I never did. But I'm thankful that I got to a point in my life where I thought the mission of this book was more important than my shyness, right? Or I felt it was more important to share this work and worry about what came to me after than to not share it. And so thank God for the confidence that my parents instilled in me, that I grew to build it within myself. And now I'm passing on to the next generation.
And pat yourself on the back. The ancestors applauding you from heaven. They're like, you go, girl. Keep on going. Strong J. Strong J.
Exactly. But too, I also, in my research, how many of our ancestors were punished for reading, for writing. But I thought, I think it's my duty. It is my duty for the ancestors who didn't get to do this, for me to put aside my imposter syndrome, the fear. Take fear along, but don't let it be in the driver's seat, and just go for it. And so that's my contribution for us as a community and to the world. So
definitely.
Thank you for allowing me to share it.
No, thank you for coming on. And the final point, it's not about being a good person. It's about being a great ancestor. And you're doing your part. Thank you for coming on the show. How can people find you?
Oh, thank you. I'm Author Zenda Walker on Instagram, but I also have a Know Your Hairitage on Instagram. I have my Facebook page, Zenda Walker, but I also have a Know Your Hairitage Facebook. You can find me on LinkedIn, straight Zenda Walker. What else? Twitter is Know Your Hairitage, but with a UR, because they won't allow me to put all those letters in there. So it's Know UR Heritage. And you can find me at www.knowyourheritage.com. There's more to come. I'm offering curriculum to schools. Like, I'm going all the way with this. If you'd like me to visit your library, your school, your after school program, or your church programs, I'm here for the community. So write me, call me. I'm here for you.
Facts. And maybe an animated series, but I'm gonna leave it like that.
Listen, you're onto something. There's more to come. Trust and believe. This is my new mission. Like, I do hair still. I work with different like VIP clients, but I also work with everyday people. And this is my new call. This is my calling. This is where I find my purpose. So you'll see more from me. Trust.
Definitely. And before we end it, I got one more question because I'm enjoying this conversation.
Yes.
I had a conversation with with a brother about the barbershop and how the barbershop is like church for Black men. Talk about beauty salon when it comes to Black women.
Absolutely. Now, listen, the barbershop is a vibe. Okay. It's a vibe. I mean, honestly, it is the place where I feel like Black men feel most human. Like you're first of all, you're attending to your self-care. Let's talk about the fact that wash day, barbershop is self-care. And I think it's where a lot of Black men feels just safe to have those conversations that we can't always have in the workplace or out in public, right? And so the beauty shop is exactly that as well. I think it is definitely the place where Black women go to feel to actually be dipped in their feminine selves. It's the place where you actually sometimes just get to sit and have someone else care for you. And I think as Black people, oftentimes we're doing the most, and sometimes we neglect our self-care. So if anything, that place is a sacred place. And that's why also, whether you're doing it in the actual commercial space or you're in that kitchen salon, what I'm encouraging parents and adults just to do in that space is now you're also creating a second layer for your child. Make it pleasant for them. Make it a fun spa day. Give them their favorite thing to watch, their favorite toy, a blankie. They're sitting between your legs, that warmth in your legs, right? That be gentle on their hair. Take the time, because those moments do impact not only who they are in the moment, it impacts who they become and who they're going to become. People take these moments with them. So I think through my books, my culturally responsive education and helping everyone understand their identity, but also making sure you see them through those experiences is going to be so important. And so I'm glad to lead the charge in that.
Thank you. And as a man, thank you for getting me into that world of the beauty salon. Because again, we look at through the outside or the beauty shop films with Queen Latifah. So I thank you for giving us a little insight of it without giving us the whole thing. Because certain things you got to keep.
Some things stay there. Just like I do in the barbershop,
Yes, which I will not divulge at all. It's going to stay there. But again, thank you so much for being on this podcast. All of the description will be below, and we out. I'm going to put up the X for the BX, and we out.
X for Wakanda and BX. Thank you so much.
No problem.